Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I would like to go into more detail about the 8 ways we can use the wrong approach, 4 ways we can work downstream, and 3 ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect. And we're going to start with the 3 ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect, because once we understand that there are 3 ways that we can screw up the law of cause and effect, we'll have a much better understanding of the 4 ways we can work downstream, as well as the 8 ways we can use the wrong approach. And then, in order to understand the 3 ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect, we need to understand that there are 3 stages of knowledge, where knowledge is acquired in the first stage, applied in the second stage, and manifested in the third stage. So when we think of the 3 stages of knowledge, we think of acquired, applied, manifested, or thoughts, actions, reactions, or beliefs, causes, effects, or belief system, lifestyle choices, feedback system, or the things we think in the first stage of knowledge, the things we do or have done to us in the second stage of knowledge, and the things we got in the third stage of knowledge. So the first way we can screw up the law of cause and effect comes before the cause. It's in the first stage of knowledge, where we don't have knowledge of how to live. And then the second way we can screw up the law of cause and effect comes in between the cause and the effect, which would be the second stage of knowledge, where knowledge is applied, and the third stage of knowledge, where knowledge is manifested. And what's happening now is that our so-called experts are taught that most of the negative effects in the third stage of knowledge are due to inappropriate signals, and therefore it's okay to negate the law of cause and effect. Let's not worry about finding the cause, because we can't go upstream for a problem that is outside of our control. And this is true. When we have a problem that is outside of our control, all we can do is treat the symptom, work in the third stage of knowledge downstream. So that's one right way we can work downstream when we have to, because the problem is outside of our control. But the problem we have is that most of our problems are not outside of our control. They are within our control, not based on things done to us, but based on the things we do. So we can screw up the law of cause and effect when we don't have the knowledge of how to live. We can screw up the law of cause and effect when we try to interfere with the body's communication process so that we don't get any more feedback, given the illusion that the problem has been solved. And then the third way we screw up the law of cause and effect is what comes after the effect. And this is one of the reasons why I created this special teaching tool, to help everyone understand the 3 ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect. And you can click right here and go to a playlist called The Ultimate Schematic, where I explain this special teaching tool in more detail. But you don't have to, because it's really, really simple. There's just 3 stages of knowledge. And the thing about cause and effect is it comes with a ripple effect. So this is the third way that we screw up the law of cause and effect, when we don't understand the ripple effect. And this is where effects become causes, as in the causal loop, and effects become knowledge, as in the knowledge loop. And the key here is we can apply the law of cause and effect and change what we do overnight and remove the primary causes immediately, but we can't change what we got overnight. So we have to understand there could be temporary impairment or permanent damage, or there could be damage control we have to deal with. And there is a time and a place where we need to support our body. And there's a time and a place we need to change our society and work downstream. So yes, we have to work upstream for a problem that's within our control. You don't want to be stuck in the third stage of knowledge, treating a symptom as if it was outside your control. Again, this is one of the ways we can work downstream the right way, and that is if we're also working upstream. But most importantly, we have to realize that most of our problems are within our control, and we've got to look at the things we do and the things we think in order to solve those problems. So once again, there are three ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect. Number one comes before the cause. We don't have knowledge of how to live. The second one is when we are in between the cause and the effect, and we're trying to interfere with the body's communication process. The third way is when we lack the knowledge of how to adapt. We think, well, most people don't have the knowledge of how to live to begin with, but then there are some who have the knowledge of how to live, and yet they don't understand the ripple effect and don't have the knowledge of how to adapt. And many times, the best thing to do is to do nothing, which is what one group of people advocate. The one group of people who understand the knowledge of how to live better than most are always screaming at everybody going, look, you're not applying the law of cause and effect, and you're not removing the primary causes, but then they think that's all we have to do because they don't understand there's a ripple effect, and then there is an art to solving problems. We've got to deal with the damage we've done. In other words, we now have two groups of needs. And what this one group is doing is assuming what we should do in an ideal world. Well, we no longer live in an ideal world anymore, where we only have one group of needs to satisfy. Now we live in a sick world, and we have two groups of needs we must satisfy. So it's very, very important that we understand that there's only one thing we have to do, and that is to satisfy these two groups of needs. But we're not doing that because we use the wrong approach. So I've gone over the three stages of knowledge. I've gone over the three ways we can screw up the law of cause and effect. The four ways we work downstream real quickly is we can do it. Remember, there's two right ways and two wrong. The first right way is when we have to because the problem is within our control. The second right way is when we're also working upstream, and then we got to work downstream to do damage control and support the body in case it's temporarily impaired or permanently damaged. The third way we can work downstream is when, and then the first wrong way is when we are treating the symptom for a problem that's within our control. There are no chemical solutions for lifestyle-related problems. There are no systems that can solve any of our problems. So piece 8.1, when we look at the 8 ways we can use the wrong approach, 8.1 is where we expect systems to solve problems that only we can solve. And of course, the reason why is that we just have way too many references that support that belief system. So the only way to challenge that many references is to have a brand new reference, and that's where the first of my 3-step process comes into play. And you can click here to go to a seminar where I explain how to do this. Remember, there's only one thing we really have to do, and that is to satisfy two groups of needs, but most of us are not willing and able to do that. That's why I added 2 preliminary steps to the only thing we have to do, thereby perfecting the 3-step process. The first step addresses the willingness issue on a temporary basis so we can see what we're missing, and then be in a better position to take the second step where we're going to correct these 5 main mistakes on a permanent basis. And the first step is the seminar I'm talking about. It's where we're going to modify what used to be the best preparation for a better way of life, but right now most people aren't willing to do it, and it's not always safe to do anymore because of the 5th mistake we've made that's damaging the environment and also damaging us. So the first 2 steps are preliminary steps, and you don't have to do them if you can just do the third thing, but most people are not willing and able to do that, and that's where we have to satisfy these 2 groups of needs. So the fourth way we can work downstream, once again, is now where we are working the wrong way again, and this is where we focus too much attention on working downstream and not going upstream at all. This is the problem. If we only work downstream and we're not going upstream, then we'll never solve any of our problems. We've got to reach the tipping point. We've got to get enough of us to go upstream, go to this seminar, click here, and be part of the hero's journey. And then once you do this, you'll be able to get rid of piece 8.1. This is the first of 8 ways we can use the wrong approach. Of course, there's a lot of ways we can use the wrong approach, but I'm only going to list 8 of them right now. The first one, once again, is when we expect systems to solve problems that only we can solve. The second way we use the wrong approach is when we go looking for logical fallacies in systems with invalid structures. Now this seems a little complicated at first, but it's really quite simple. You see, when you use logic to solve problems, there are 2 requirements or 2 criteria that must be met. It's like there's 2 tests that have to be given, and you got to pass both tests. The problem we have is you don't want to take the second test until you take the first test. Why? Because it might take you forever to grade the second test, and only to find out it's perfect, but then you find out, wait a second, they failed the first test. It only takes a second to figure out if they failed the first test or not. So never go looking for logical fallacies, or never start with test 2 until you first start with step 1. So that's one way we use the wrong approach. It's one of the main ways we're misdirected. We're always trying to find the flaws in the system that's working when it's the system itself that shouldn't be there to begin with. You see, again, if you use logic, there are 2 requirements. One has to do with the specifics or the details, or what they call contents, and they refer to that as a train. And then the other has to do with the structure, and that's where the tracks come into play. And the tracks are always one direction. This is where we use ordered pairs like cause and effect and action and reaction. That's why I used ordered pairs in my 6-box system, my special teaching tool, so that we can make sure not get tricked and fooled and be guilty of what's called modus ponens, which is piece 8.4. So piece 8.2 is we're looking for logical fallacies in systems within invalid structures. We're trying to prove the train is true without realizing the tracks are going the wrong way. Don't start looking at the train, look at the tracks. Otherwise, we're making it complicated. We always do what Sherlock Holmes would do, and that is to eliminate the impossible. So by using logic, we can get them to fail the first test and not worry about anything else, which is where we're getting tricked and misled. So the third way in which we can use the wrong approach is when we teach our so-called experts everything they need to know to solve a problem that's outside of control, but they tell them, but it's for a problem within our control. So they're taught anatomy and chemistry and pharmakeia, again, for problems that are outside our control, but most of our problems are not outside our control, and that's where that wrong approach is done. 8.4 is where we're putting the cart before the horse. We're using the wrong approach whenever we treat a symptom for a problem that's self-inflicted. In Latin, this is called modus ponens. And this is the big flaw in all the systems in charge. So what you do is you get them to take this test. Excuse me. And that test is, are you going the right direction? No, you're putting the cart before the horse. You don't treat a symptom for a problem outside of control. You don't work downstream for a problem within your control. You only do that for problems outside your control. You can't go upstream for a problem outside your control. But when you got something you don't like, and it's within your control, you got to go upstream and look at what you do. We'll look at your lifestyle choices. Then you got to go upstream and look at your belief system. This is where it all starts. We lack the knowledge of how to live. And most of us have too many references that support what we're doing. So the only thing you can do is have a brand new reference. Click here and go to my YouTube video, and then you can see for yourself that life is an illusion. That all these problems they've been trying to solve, they'll never be able to solve, because the solution to all those problems lies within us. So 8.4, modus ponens. 8.5 is when we look at our problems individually instead of collectively. Doctors don't study the concept of totality. If they did, they go, wait a second, there's a common link to all these problems. Food, 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 diet, diet, diet. Environment, environment, environment. There's a common link. Our lifestyle choices. So that's using the wrong approach. 8.6 is where we don't tell this story in a parable format, because most people are going to shut down their frontal lobe, just shut it right off, have a mental processing error, so they don't have to think about these type of things. So if you tell people too much what it is, they're going to go, I don't want to hear no more. So you got to be a little sly about how you approach this. Then piece 8.7 is where we use the wrong approach, where we only think there are 2 ways to correct 5 main mistakes. And not enough people are willing to do that to help us reach the tipping point. Once again, things will never change unless we reach the tipping point. And then we don't consider how important the other way, which is where my first step comes into play. And once again, click here and you can go to that YouTube video. And then finally, 8.8 is where we focus too much attention on doing damage control when we don't spend all that time going upstream. So we don't want to spend too much time downstream, but we have to be aware of it. But if we focus all of our attention there, we're using the wrong approach. We can't focus too much attention on piece number 3, because there are many levels in Plato's cave. And I talk about this in my other videos. You can click here and go to an 11-part video series, 3 hours, 46 minutes long, where I explain every piece of the puzzle. And you can go and look at only parts that you want to look at. Go to the ultimate schematic, and then you can see how all these pieces fit together logically. They're all logically connected. And then don't forget, go to my seminar, take the second step on the hero's journey and accept this mission. Test an idea's time is coming. When you do, I guarantee you, you're in for a treat.